What's up, everyone? I'm here, my NFL Week 3 recap and lineup review. And man, Week 3, definitely the most upset-filled week we've had all season, and probably be one of the more upset-filled weeks we have all year, honestly. So, we had the Vikings laying a beat down on the Buccaneers and Case Keenum looking like an absolute elite quarterback. We had the Panthers not being able to move the ball effectively whatsoever against the NFL's worst defense. We had the Redskins looking like it was 1982 against the Raiders last night on Sunday Night Football. We had the Broncos falling on the road against the Bills, which I don't think was, it was an upset, but it was kind of, that looked like a trap game anyway. Then we had, just all kinds of stuff. I haven't even talked about the fact that the Falcons are probably, 2 yards away from being 1-2, and they're sitting at 3-0 right now. So lots and lots of weird things so far, especially in Week 3. But let's go ahead and take a look at some of these lineups and build upon, the crazy week that Week 3 was. All right, so we're looking at my dreadful cash game lineup this week and didn't even hit 100 points. Awful, I know, but, it's just one of those things. So for me, I call this a 10% week, because I get asked a lot if I think DFS is gambling, and I always say no because, first off, I think DFS is a skill. I view it more as investing, right? Sometimes an investment pays off, sometimes it doesn't. So I view it as if I'm investing in these players. And I also use the analogy that if you pulled a random person off the street and paired them against me in, say, the lottery, we each would have the same, chance of winning, right? That's gambling right there. That's taking a gamble on that situation. Whereas if you took a random person off the street who knows nothing or very little about football and paired them against me, I would like to think that I would beat them 90% of the time. 10% of the time they're going to win just based off variance and luck, right? Well, I think this might be one of those weeks and that 10% that I probably would have gotten beat because just a bad week. So let me know down in the comment section if your cash game lineup was bad this week as well. I have a feeling that most of you probably didn't do too well either because as a whole it was just a low scoring week on DraftKings, especially in cash lineups. So I fought for a long time if I was going to go Stafford or Cousins. Obviously, I ended up going Stafford mainly because I was going to have that correlation between Eric Ebron there in my flex. I've said it before, I do not force stacks in my cash game lineup. Usually they just kind of happen. Usually, my top quarterback on the board for cash happens to correlate with one of the top wide receivers on my board for cash games. This week, it really didn't match up like that. And because of that, I don't want to say I forced it because I didn't. The tight end position had the most value of any position this week, in my opinion. So that's kind of why I went with Eric Ebron there. Eric Ebron had a couple bad drops. Stafford also overthrew him a couple of different times. Stafford also got screwed out of, another, 5 or 6 points there at the end. He looked like he threw a touchdown pass to Golden Tate. Apparently Tate was down at the 1. I've seen the play a couple of different times. It looked like he was across the plane still to me, but I'm looking at it with a biased opinion anyway. So yeah, obviously it should have went Cousins here, but 16 points shouldn't have killed me if the rest of my guys did what they were supposed to do. Moving down to the running back spot here, you can see that I faded Jay Ajayi, and I honestly thought that he was going to be the chalkiest guy on the board in the entire slate. I really thought he was. It was going to be him or Higgins. I'm not sure what his ownership was. We could probably jump to the lineup up here. Nope, none of these are all the same. It don't matter. Anyway, I don't know what his ownership was, but his had to be 50+% as well, I would think. But seeing Montgomery and Bell over 50%, it probably wasn't. The reason I faded Ajayi in cash is just because he's not the kind of running back that I play in cash games. He's not a guy who catches passes. I want dual threat running backs in my cash game lineups, and that's why I decided to go with Bell and Montgomery. Honestly, Bell did not play that great. The 6 receptions was definitely very useful, and that definitely saved his day for DraftKings purposes, but didn't really look that great. Had 61 rushing yards. I'm not sure how many attempts he had on the ground, and finally did sneak into the end zone, but it was a 1-yard rush after a couple of failed red zone attempts for the Redskins, or excuse me, the Steelers through the air. So it really did not look like a situation where they just wanted to use him all that much in goal line situations anyway. Plus, the Steelers have always been kind of we'll come out with an empty set on the 2-yard line. They've just always been that kind of team to spread things out. So, it wasn't a huge deal, but Bell still didn't look like the elite, kind of bell cow we've seen, pun intended there, that we've seen over the past few seasons. So yes, this is only his third game. I thought this was going to be the breakout game for him. It definitely was the best week he's had so far in fantasy, but certainly wasn't a breakout game by any means. Moving down to Ty Montgomery, he was basically half a foot away from having a really good fantasy day. If you would have told me that Montgomery would have had 8 receptions and that the Packers would have won this game, I definitely would have played him in my cash game lineup anyway, because I would have figured that he probably would have had 20 plus points. He was very close to scoring a touchdown on the ground. To me, it looked like he got in the first time. The refs never signaled. The second time, he got stuffed. Montgomery really just didn't do much on the ground, didn't do much through the air. It looked like he got banged up on one play. I'm not really sure what the issue was there. I haven't heard yet. A little bit disappointed there, but, it really couldn't have hurt me that bad since he was nearly 60% owned. But honestly, he could have had a much better game. And this is one pick in this lineup I certainly don't regret. All right, moving down to my wide receivers here, and this is where I struggled all week long because there was really no one wide receiver over 7K that I felt great about. There were some that I felt okay about, especially in GPPs, but in cash games, there was no one guy that really stood out to me. I'll show you another lineup that I had here in a second that I nearly played in cash. Unfortunately, that lineup did score more points than this, and I'll kind of talk you guys through why I decided not to go with that one and went this route instead. But first guy I want to talk about is Keenan Allen. So an 18%, I was a little bit surprised he came down so much considering how well he played in the previous week, but I was okay with it. I just thought it was a good spot for him. I mean, first off, he was going to be in the slot a lot here, so he wasn't going to be seeing Marcus Peters a lot. He was going to be facing Phillip Gaines, who's one of the worst cornerbacks rated by Pro Football Focus right now. And, honestly, he didn't play that poorly. Keenan Allen did. He had 5 receptions for 61 yards, which is about half of the stat line I expected him to post, right? I'm expecting stat lines very similar to this, just increased, right? Meaning that I suspect he's going to get 7 to 8 targets and close to 100 receiving yards a game because he's going to get so many targets. But Phillip Rivers was just incapable of completing a pass to his own team in this game, it seemed. I think he threw 3 or 4 interceptions. Just a really rough game, and it was pretty clear that Keenan Allen was getting a little bit frustrated. Allen almost salvaged with a touchdown near the end of the game there. It would have been a garbage time. It really wouldn't have meant anything to the game itself, but it really would have helped me, especially since he was the lowest or the second lowest owned player on this team. Sucks there. I don't regret going with Keenan. It was just a really, really weird week for this particular Chargers team. They're just incapable of actually, closing games. They either play a game really, really well but end up losing it near the end, or they just play an entire game just awful with Phillip Rivers just chucking the ball over the field and looking awful. So just one of those games for the Chargers. Then we have Davante Adams, and usually I don't like playing 2 teammates that aren't a quarterback and a pass catcher in the same cash game lineup too much, but I thought this was a spot where, Davante Adams was just a little bit too cheap given the fact that Randall Cobb wasn't going to play. I knew that the Bengals were much better against teams on the outside than they are on the slot, which was where Jordy Nelson was going to play. That's one of the reasons I wanted to play Jordy Nelson over Keenan Allen, but I just couldn't quite get there. So because of that, going with Davante Adams here, a little bit lower owned than I was expecting him to be. Didn't have a great game. Geronimo Allison, had that big reception, which really hurt me because I think a lot of people ended up punting there at wide receiver and going that route. If I did, I could have probably done a lot more things with my lineup, but it is what it is. I don't know. I don't want to say I regret the pick because my mindset here was that, I just thought that more targets would be funneled his way than usual because of no Randall Cobb, and that was really my mindset. So then we went with Higgins, and I kind of fed into the hype here. I really, really wanted to go Devin Funchess here. I just did not want to play Higgins. I knew he was going to be super highly owned because the DFS industry was hyping him up immensely. I wanted to go Funchess. Felt like I would get lower ownership. Felt like he had a little bit higher upside, but I also felt like his floor was a little bit better as well because, I just didn't really know what to expect out of Higgins. I felt like Higgins could either put up 3 points as we saw, or I felt like he could put up, 20 plus. He hit his floor here, which did not give me warm and fuzzies. Not like Funchess played significantly better. Even if I would have played Funchess over Higgins in this specific lineup, it would not have made a difference. I still would not have cashed. But, again, one of those things, I kind of bought into the hype, and I definitely blame myself here. Definitely the one pick that I regret in this lineup the most is Higgins. Looking at tight end here, I went Ertz. All week it looked like people were going to pay down at tight end, and ultimately, all week I pretty much wanted to pay up at tight end. I thought Ertz was a great play, especially if Janoris Jenkins did play, which he did. kind of locked down Alshon Jeffrey for the most part, I think. And Ertz had a pretty good game. I was really hoping that the Eagles kicker, his name is just eluding me right now, but I was really hoping he was not going to drill that 61-yard field goal, so this game would go to overtime and Ertz would have some more potential to put up some points. But nevertheless, it didn't happen. Ertz did have a fumble, which, really, 1 point, not a big deal. But that touchdown definitely bumped up his day even more. The kind of the big disappointing Zach Ertz day is coming, but hasn't come yet. And so far, he's definitely looking like a top 3 tight end. I'm interested to see what his price is going to be for next week. Haven't looked at the pricing yet for week 4. Already talked about Eric Ebron. Then we have the Eagles defense, which looked like it was, the stone cold lock to be kind of a top 5 defense. Until the fourth quarter, they all of a sudden just started giving up points. Eagles had to really claw to win this game. It looked like the Eagles gave this game away. 2 late Odell Beckham Jr. touchdowns, and just a massively long field goal to win the game, like I alluded to earlier. So really, really weird week with my lineup here. But so looking at my other cash potential lineup here, and you can see it put up 115 points. So it didn't do significantly better, but I just looked. In all 3 of the multiple entry double ups that I entered in, it would have cashed by over 2 points. So that really, really hurts. That could have changed my entire day. I would have been able to salvage, even though it wouldn't have been a great lineup for me. But it is what it is. You can see the big difference here would be at defense and 2 wide receiver spots. I went with the Panthers defense here, which ended up getting no points, which big surprise there, not really. And then we had the Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell kind of stack correlation there, and then I also ended up going with Funchess. And the real reason I ended up not going with this lineup was because I did not want to play Funchess and Higgins in the same lineup together. I just could not bring myself to do it. I thought there was a high potential for both of them not, exceeding expectations, and lo and behold, neither of them did. Looking back at it, I should have said, okay, should I trust Antonio Brown and Devin Funchess or Keenan Allen and Devontae Adams more? And, looking back on it now, obviously it's easy to say, oh, I would trust Antonio Brown. But I don't know. I just felt like my other lineup was a little bit more balanced. Also, I had a better chance with getting some defensive points, I thought. So, this was just one of those weeks where I was a little bit indecisive in my cash game lineup. I literally was trying to decide between these 2 lineups all the way up to a lock. Within 5 minutes of, the 1 p.m. game starting, I was considering this lineup still. And I usually never do that. Usually my cash game lineup is almost like locked and ready to go on Saturday night unless, something changes big in the news. And usually I'm just kind of tweaking and fiddling with GPP lineups if I feel the need to. So interesting week here. Let me know how your cash game lineup did. But for me, a little bit disappointing that I missed out on all the money here because I literally would have won all of my head-to-heads too. I still actually won a few head-to-heads even with that awful 99-point lineup, which is just kind of crazy to think. But I keep saying it, but once again, just one of those crazy NFL DFS weeks. All right, so this ended up being my highest scoring lineup on the week here. Ended up going with the Kirk Cousins and Terrell Pryor stack, and I'm pretty much just coming to the conclusion here that Pryor is just not very good at the moment. I think he is going to be a good receiver, and I think he's going to be a competent play moving forward, down the road. But right now, I just don't have much confidence in him. I've played him 2 of the first 3 weeks, at least in GPPs, and he has yet to do anything for me. So I'm sure next week I won't play him in any lineups, and he'll probably go off and drop 30 points, so all of you guys should probably look out for that. But I can't say I'm going to be playing any Pryor moving forward anytime soon. Yeah, this lineup had a lot of potential, and I said this a lot last week as well in my lineup review, but this lineup really did. I mean, you can see here, lots of 20-point scores on the top half of my lineup, and then the bottom half just let me down immensely. Once again, I went with Eric Ebron, the Panthers defense here. This was really more of a calculated decision here. I wasn't playing the Panthers defense to try to look for value here. I was playing the Panthers defense because I went with Christian McCaffrey here and I wanted that correlation. If you don't know what a double dip is, basically you're playing the punt returner or kick returner and the defense of that specific player's team, hoping that he can return one for a touchdown, because if he does, you're going to get 12 points right away because you get 6 points for the return for the defense and for the specific player, of course. So that's an instant 12 points. So I was kind of looking for that. Knew the probability wasn't too high, but also, having a defense correlation, if a defense can, force a turnover or something along those lines and put the offense in a really good field position, a lot of times the running back will run it in for a touchdown. That didn't happen here, but McCaffrey still had a really good day. Over 100 receiving yards, 9 receptions, had added in, another point and a half basically with 16 rushing yards. So You know, can't complain too much about McCaffrey, even though a lot of it was in garbage time. Cousins went off, but none of it went towards Pryor. I already talked a little bit about that. The real big surprise in the lineup for me was Travis Kelce. If you would have told me that Kansas City would have went into LA, beat the Chargers on the road 24-10, I probably would have assumed that Kelce would have at least had, you know, 6-7 receptions for 70 or 80 yards and probably a touchdown. He had one reception in this game. One. I didn't see much of the game, so I don't know if he got banged up or what. I haven't gone back and watched it yet on Game Pass, but appears not to be utilized much here. And he was under 10% owned. Decided to go up and pay for him at $6K. Thought it'd be a little bit different. And yeah, I mean, just lots of surprises there for me. So I also went with Devontae Parker here. He had a garbage time touchdown, I believe it was, so he salvaged there. Deshaun Jackson was a guy I nearly played in cash. For once, I actually had my buddies trying to talk me into Deshaun Jackson for cash, and for once, I actually should have listened to them. A lot of them were high on Higgins as well, and they kind of, like I said, like half the time my buddies are always right, and half the time they're just like so far from being right, it's unbelievable. So a lot of times I end up just fading their opinion. Sometimes we do have the same opinion, but yeah. So this was a time, a rare situation where I should have went with their opinion here and played Deshaun Jackson in cash. But you know, it is what it is. So as a whole, this lineup wasn't too bad. It was literally just almost a point out of the money here, but it really wouldn't have made a big difference. So if I could have did a little bit more at the bottom half of my lineup here, definitely has some potential to have a much better scoring lineup. Alright, so that's going to do it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to let me know down in the comments, how did you do this week? Did you have, you know, a really bad cash lineup like I did, but did really well in GPPs? Maybe the other way around. Maybe you actually had a good cash lineup but didn't do too well in GPPs, or maybe you just, you know, were also like me and had an awful week altogether. Yeah, we're 2 for 3 so far in terms of cashing in our in our cash lineup. So certainly not something that I can complain about too much. If I continue that moving forward, I won't complain too much. So yeah, hopefully I see you guys back here for week 4, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Later.